Hello everyone, today I'm working on this 282. It's a Kato. It's a Japanese engine. It says 251. Let me show you the illustration in the back. There we go. So it's in pretty good shape, other than it's been the lid's been missing, so it collected a lot of dust over time. So I've got to take it apart to clean it. Could you Americanize this? Of course you could. You could even just put the logo and the engine number. It looked pretty American. Should you? I don't know. I prefer to run them like that. Kato makes a very nice American 282. So I would probably just buy the American one. Even though these come on options and they're cheap, that's the main reason why they're cheap, is because they look very Japanese. Incidentally, that's why a Mikado is called a Mikado. It's because they shared the technology with the Japanese. Let me show you some more stuff that's in the box there. A couple of little instructions. So the insert is foam. You get more instructions in Japanese. You can change out apparently the front truck to get the coupler to the front, which that part is missing here. So I didn't get that. We get Japanese instructions and decals for the Japanese units, and then all the illustrations. So that's all kind of neat. So okay, we're gonna start from under the engine. As you can see, it does pick up electricity from the back truck. So I think I'm gonna start by cleaning that out. There are wires from the tender. There's wires here from the tender to the engine that connects for electricity. So yeah, always have to be careful not to rip these out. So that's the first part I'm gonna work on, cleaning the rear truck. It's very similar to the 484 that I like. And then the weight from the back here gets released with the coal load. So you got your coal load and the weight. That's going to get cleaned. And it also releases the drawbar. And then there's contact strips inside here with the wiring, so I cannot separate the tender from the engine. But that's actually all good stuff. And then this little guy here, I don't know what's going on with that. I'll work on that off camera. So that back truck is a repair that somebody did years ago. I'm not too pleased with that. I'm gonna figure out a way to change this. Now I'll be working on the main part of the engine by removing these two screws. I should be able to loosen that plate. You may want to sweep the floor before you start working on this, because if you lose something on the floor, it's going to be always small parts, so you want to be able to find them. Usually this back plate has brake details that come with it. This engine seems to be no exception. So there you have the brake detail, and you can see it's really dusty. The reason why these Kato engines run so well is because each wheel has its own bearing. This the front pilot is very easy to remove. So is the rear pilot. Just comes out like that. So I'll clean them separately. Now I just revealed a screw here. This probably holds definitely holds the cylinder, probably holds the boiler. So before I do that though, I'm going to remove all my side rods. And I'm going to be taking my time. It's nice for me too, it's nice to have the video. That way I can go back and look again if I misplace something. But these little rods there, they just snap together. So it's not too hard to put them back. It's just a snap. So I'll just snap this off. It's a really fine part. So I lost one of my drivers there. That's okay, I need to take them off to clean them anyways. Now the main rod that goes into the cylinder, that should just slide out. Well, if it doesn't, that's not the end of the world. And then I have the pin here for the connecting rod. This little pin, you want to be very careful not to lose that. It's very small. This is what it looks like. I'll get my camera to refocus on it. Yeah, it's a tough job for my camera. There we go. So it's a small part. So you definitely don't want to drop this on the floor. So I took the other one off. It's the same thing. You want to be very, very careful when you handle these. And then this can just get cleaned. Got upset there a little bit because my camera wasn't focusing. So I'll do the rest of it like this so you can see just a little bit better what I'm doing. Did you see that it threw the pin out? All part of the fun and games of N-scale. Yeah, so there's my little pin with my connecting rod. So I'll put that in my box and I'll look for the other pin that got thrown out. As a general rule, taking things apart is easy and then putting them back together it's hard. So well, anyways, I found my pin and I'll just continue. So put that in your box as you go. That's going to give you a chance to find them. So now my drivers are free. And that means I can clean them. I'll also be removing the little connecting rods for the valves. I'll remove that now. That, if you want, can even go back last. This little guy here could go back last if you want. And then I can see my valve gear is just held together in there over some pins. So I'll work on that off camera. So there's a decent amount of hair and dirt in there, isn't there? So you can just gently pull on it against the pins and then it will get released. Once you have it released, you can undo this screw here. That should release your cylinders and you should be able to grab everything out of there as a unit. The two smoke deflectors here, they make it look really Japanese. If you were to Americanize this, you'd probably remove them. So there, I pretty much have the complete valve gear. Now these come out like that. And then having the parts separate, it's gonna make it much easier to clean it. Now I can see my frame and my shell. I'm going to see if I can remove the shell from the frame. So I had to experiment on this off camera a little bit, but it's not so bad. There's two tabs under here that once you have them loose, it releases everything, including the cab and the boiler. And then there's a counterweight. Sorry, not a counterweight, just a weight. There's no provision for any lights on this engine, just like my Kato 464 that I like. And then you get your motor and your worm gear. It's just pressed in there, so it'll wiggle loose. And then you have the main parts of the frame with 3 idler gears in there. So that is going to definitely benefit from a good cleaning. There's your entire wiring for the whole engine. So it's a split frame, so it collects power from the drivers. And now I have my 2 screws that hold the 2 frame halves together. And after that, I'm done with the disassembly part. And I can start putting stuff, cleaning stuff and putting stuff back together now. And manage your screws, don't want to lose the screws. So you have these 2 separators. You have one at the front and one at the back, and then you have all your idler pulleys, and then you have that double gear here. That's going to need a lot of clean. And now we're disassembled, so I'm going to clean all that with my soap and my toothbrush, and then we'll get ready to put it back together. This shell, it's really dirty, it's sad. Such a nice engine. There's incidentally 2 little brass parts here, so if you accidentally hit these, they're very strong. That's really good quality, quality where it counts. These would be probably pop valves, these little guys here. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. This would be your whistle here, your steam generator for the headlight. There's no provision for a working headlight here. There's an Ilesco feed water heater. There's your sand dome. You can see the sand pipes going down. Air compressor. There's an air tank here. There's another air tank here with another compressor. Maybe this guy is an injector. I should probably read up on this. Very good engine. Good stuff. The reason why I disassembled them like this, it's because the dirt doesn't only get on the outside, it gets on the inside too. So that's why you have to do it like that, I think. The motor looks to be in really good shape, and it doesn't make any noise. So I'm still gonna lubricate it, but I don't think it really needs it. So I just put a little drop in there and I let it work itself in. And I'll do the same for the bearing that's in the back. Now as I look at my two frame halves, you can see on the screw side there's two sleeves that prevent the screws from contacting both sides and causing a short circuit. So be sure that you have them. So over here now I'm going to lubricate this. You don't really need that much, but since I have everything in my hand, I'm going to give it some. Just feels good when you have a clean engine. And these three little ones, they're interchangeable. That feels a lot better. And don't forget your two insulators. Then you can bring the second half of the frame together. There. That looks real good. And I'm going to bring the two screws. The longer one goes to the back. This would be on the real engine, the ash pit, or at the ashtray. And on the front, on a real engine, this would just be empty here. There's a, I don't know if you know this, but between the frame and the boiler is just empty space. So in N scale, that would be impossible to do. You need to have everything filled in because you want that extra weight. You can pull more cars. So I washed my wheels also, but over and above going with the toothbrush, I will clean them up with my rag. So this is the number 4 driver, and it has traction tires, so that goes to the rear. All the wheels, they have different counterweights, so they all have a specific place. So that's the name. The first one's called number 1, and then number 2, number 3, number 4. So this is number 4. The number 3 one is called the main driver. It has a bigger counterweight. And what that does is, as you get to reassembling your engine, it's the one that gets the little actuator for the valve gears. And also the peg that goes in it is square, so you can properly time the valve gear. The peg that goes in here is square, so remember that when you put it back together. Also, over and above cleaning them, they'll each have their own little bearing, so I'll be putting just a drop in there, just a tiny little drop on each bearing, and then we'll get back to put it together. Also, as you put them back together, on top of every wheel being different, they have to be timed very precisely for the engine to work, so that there's no other way to do it. You have to work very slowly and precisely. And also, as you time them, you have to be mindful that they will sit in their little cradle, and you start from the back because the back is connected to the motor. So you start from the back and then you work your way to the front. Now as I slip it into the gear, it's going to turn maybe an eighth of a turn. So I keep that in mind as I select its place. And well, that didn't work so good. And as it slips in its gear, it's going to turn it an eighth of a turn. So you have to do one gear at a time, one driver at a time until it's perfect. But always start from the back. There, that's completely wrong. I have to redo it. But let me work on that off camera. So when I was timing my gears, I noticed that the number one driver, this one, the gear is cracked. So it's going to keep binding like that. You might hear it when it's going down the track. So that's kind of bad, but there's nothing much I can do about it. I have to run it like that. See, it's blocking. So that is kind of sad. Could have been a good runner, this engine. Anyways, I'm going to put the motor back on. Then we'll see what happens. So to put the motor, I just have to loosen this screw just a little bit. And then the motor, it will just slide right in here. There's a little nook for it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna tighten my screw. And then we'll put some power to it and see how it goes. So it's gonna move forward, but backing up is impossible. So forward is gonna be okay, but you can feel there's a place where it slows down a bit. So you're gonna hear that knocking. So forward is gonna be okay. But backwards, forget it. So it won't even go. Backward, it just blocks. Yes, that's bad news. Backwards, it just blocks. So it's still gonna move forward, so I'm gonna complete the assembly. So I'm gonna put its weight and its shell back on. You have to put the cab on first. It has two tabs that go in it, and once everything's in there, you can't remove the cab. And then that just snaps right back in there. Just need to see what I'm doing here. There, that'll just snap in there. Just like so. So I'll stick my pin in there, and then I'll use the connecting rod as a guide to get it down to the driver. And then once that's in, I just force it in. And then I'll repeat that for the other side. So I set up my pin, and then I'll bring it up to the driver. And then once it's in, it's in. So now I'm getting ready to bring in the rest of the valve gear. So I've got my cylinder, and my piston slides in, and the rest of the valve gear will slide in too. And then we'll do the other side. Get the piston in first, and then the valve gear. And then the shell gets in the way, so I removed my shell. So I can just bring this in, and then I can shimmy it around and put it on its pins where it's supposed to go. Don't forget that little screw that holds the cylinders in. And then I can bring this part in. So this part, there is a timing to it. So I can line this up properly. There's a timing to it. I started perpendicular to the journal, and then I take it back just a 1/4 degree. The box is square, so it'll find its place. Just have to go back just a little bit, and then once it gets in, you feel it. And then you can connect this little arm here. Now I can put my weight and my shell back on, and I'll put on the trailing trucks and the pilot truck. So I just have to undo these 2 screws here. And the trailing truck has its little pin. And the pilot truck has its little pin. The pins will be under here. And then I can put my 2 screws back on. Wow, that's really starting to take shape. Now I have my truck here for the tender. And this little guy gets cleaned because it does conduct electricity. So that's going to help me with my electrical pickup. So I'll do my process where I use my rag. I can do this off camera. So it's really starting to take shape now. So I'm gonna put my truck in its place. And then I have to bring my screw in. Now remember on the other side of the tender how I have contact strips? So that I have to reorganize that. And the weight is going to come in and settle it down, and then I can screw in. See, that doesn't feel right, so I can come in and screw in my truck once I have the weight over there, over the 2 wires where it's supposed to be. There, now that's better. So now I can line up everything from the bottom. And then bring my screw in. And I'm done. And now it's time to run some trains. Considering that it has broken gears in it, I'm very lucky to get it to work. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you soon.